All right, let's get going with today's discussion. A couple of questions about what we did last week. Here's a set of data. We've been analyzing data the last few days, and we're going to ask you to find the median, the least value, the greatest value, and the range, because they're going to come in handy with what we're doing today. So the median, if you remember, we have to find the middle. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 data pieces here. So we just need to count in from 4 from each side. 1, 2, 3, 4. The fifth one is 5, and we have 4 on the other side. So our middle number, or our median in this case, is 5. The least value is 1. The greatest value is 12. And our range is 12 subtract 1, which is 11. Unfortunately, the data was organized from least to greatest, and so it helps a great deal, even if you're just finding these kinds of information for it. Okay, so today we're going to talk about box and whisker plots. And a box and whisker plot basically takes the data and you get a big data set, and you basically cut it into 4 equal sections. And we're going to explain how to cut it into these 4 sections. So each section of the box plot with its whiskers represents 25% of your total data pieces. Like if it scores in a classroom, 25 of the students scored in this section, 25 in this section, 25 in this, and so on. So each section represents 25% of your total data. And kind of illustrated by this slide. So 1/4 of the data is in each whisker. 1/2 of the data is in the box, but the box is divided by the median in the middle there. So 1/4 of the data is in this side of the box, and the other 1/4 is on this side of the box. But that still might sound a little bit confusing, so we'll try to illustrate how that works. Now, there's another thing that we're going to be looking at is the interquartile range. So once you've got your box into place and you found the first and third quartiles, then you just, whatever that number is, you subtract the lower one from the upper one, and that gives you the interquartile range, which means what is the range of the middle 50% of the data, as it shows right there. Okay? Okay, what does this box and whisker plot tell you about the data? So that's something that you're trying to figure out. And if you notice, it's talking about height here, and it's telling you that 75% of the whatever you're looking at is greater than 58%, or 58 inches, excuse me. So, quite a bit. These are taller people, if that's what we're talking about, or longer lengths as well. Okay, so the left whisker is longer than the right whisker, so the data are more spread out below the first quartile than above it. So over on this section of the graph, this 1/4 of the people, there's kind of a bigger spread on what those numbers fall into versus the upper section. So just a couple of conclusions that you can draw. Okay, so a box and whisker plot, in order to construct one, you need to come up with 5 different pieces of data. First, the smallest number, then you're going to divide it into half, which is the median, and then you're going to find the middle of the upper and the lower halves, and then you're going to find also the maximum. So I'm going to demonstrate how this works. So here's some numbers here. This is number of hours spent online for some students. So I'm going to reorganize the data and put it in least to greatest order. Then I'm going to find these 5 points of data. So the very middle of my graph is between 12 and 14 here. And then the middle of the lower half is between 6 and 8. And the middle of the upper half is between 17 and 18. So if I calculate those out, this is what they look like. All right, so there's my 5 points of data, and we also included the interquartile range right there. So how do we construct this box plot? Then we're going to start out by finding the median, which is the quartile number 2, when it's number 13. So I'm going to find 13 on my graph. So 10, 11, 12, 13. I'm going to make a nice little straight line just above 13. Then my lower quartile, which is 7, I'm going to go over to 7, which is right here, and that's going to be my next little line to mark out where 7 is. And then my upper quartile is 17.5. So 17.5 is going to be right in this area. And this illustration is basically your box. Okay, so now the whiskers leave each end of the box and go out to the maximum and minimum. So this one is going to go over to 24. And then the lower one's going to go down to 0. And so there is our box and whisker plot of this set of data. And this data is actually pretty evenly distributed if you look at it. The whiskers are about the same length and the sections of the box are about the same length. So a nice little set of data. Okay, here's another set of data. Let's reorganize this data as well and find those 5 points of stuff. So here's the reorganized numbers. So from least to greatest, I mark the middle, which is the median. Then I have the upper and lower quartiles. Sometimes they call this quartile 1, quartile 2, and quartile 3. And then I also have my max and min. All right, so then I record those numbers, those 5 key numbers that we talked about earlier. And I also have an interquartile range, which is 6, which sometimes you'll get questions about that interquartile range and you'll need to know how to calculate it. Now, also, sometimes you're going to have to come up with your own scale on these box and whisker plots. So look at the numbers they give you and come up with a scale that fits the data. Your scale doesn't have to look exactly the same each time. All right, so now that we've got our data ready to go, my median, which is 84, is going to go right here. So it looks like I'm going up by 2 on each of these boxes. So my median is going to be 84. Now here's kind of something interesting that we don't usually see. The left middle of the data, because there's so many 84s in there, the middle of the lower half of the data is also 84. I'm going to kind of mark that with a different color there. And then the middle of the upper half is at 90. So here's my box. And you got to keep in mind that right in that section of the box right there, there's 3 84-degree numbers right there. So a lot of the data is stuck in that portion of the box. And then our minimums are going to go out to the lowest. So this is going to go over to 73. And the other minimum is going to go up to 92, which is just right there. So an interesting distribution of data, right? The lower section is really wide. The second one over is just like really skinny. Then the other two are a little bit bigger. So this is how you make a box and whisker plot. All right, next. Here's another set of data here that you could use. So, you could organize those numbers from least to greatest. And so let's go ahead and do that one a little bit more from scratch to know what we've been doing, because I've kind of had the other ones found. So if I look at this, I'm going to just try and find the middle. So sometimes it's nice to just chop off a number from each side as you work your way into the middle. And when you do it, you find out you got a median of 90. All right. So median, or the quartile 2, is 90. The lowest number, 69. The highest number, 110. What about quartile 1 and 2? Well, if I look, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 numbers on each side of that median. So I'm going to have a middle number right there, another middle number right there. So my first quartile is going to be 85. My next quartile is going to be 104. And then all you have to do now is do 104 minus 85. And that gives you an interquartile range of 19, should they ask that data. Okay. All right, so let's plot this. So our lowest number's got to be somewhere just right around 70, 65. So we're just going to go, let's say 60, and we got to get up to 110. So I'm going to come over here and mark this as 60. And 1, 2, 3, 4. So every 2, we're going to mark another one. So this will be 70. Each mark represents 2, or 1, 2, 3. It represents 2.5. So 1, 2, 3, 4. That's going to be 80. 1, 2, 3, 4. 90. And then we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Oops, not quite far enough. Let me get my eraser there and get that extra mark out of the way. Okay, so this is 100, and this was 90, kind of mislabeled it there. Looks like we may actually have to extend our graph just a smidge. So we're going to add another mark there. So 100, and yet a third mark. So way over on the end there, we're going to have 110. So sometimes making your plot can be a little bit challenging, and that's why we're doing one that's kind of that way. Okay, so our median, quartile 2 is 90, so we're going to make a mark like that at 90. Our lower quartile is 85, so that's going to be right in the middle between 80 and 90. And our upper quartile is going to be at 110, which is way over there. Oh, no, our upper quartile, is going to be at 104. So that's going to be about right here. About right there. So there's our box plot. Now the upper whisker goes over to 110. Oh, gotta be careful here. Get back on where my marks are. Okay, over to 110. And then my lower maximum is 69. So this whisker is going to go clear over and tie in right there about 69. So there's a box and whisker plot for this set of data. So you're going to have a worksheet where you're going to make a box and whisker plot for scores on a science test. Another one on hamburgers sold. You're going to make one on this regular set of data. And yet another one on pages that were printed. And you're noticing that on these, they've got a scale for you. They got the place to put the 5 sets of data plus the interquartile range. So this should go pretty good. And then when you get done with making those, you're going to answer these last 5 questions about what percent of the data is represented by a whisker, what percent of the data is represented by a box, and so on and so forth. So enjoy doing this assignment. This is one of the more fun ones I find all year. And thank you very much.